Greetings, family. Nils Paulson here, 2018 primary candidate for U.S. Congress here in California's 5th District, and I'm here today with a little post-election recap. Just over a week ago, Californians voted, at least some of us did, in the 2018 midterm primary elections. Votes are still being tallied, and the results are not yet certified, but it appears as though we did not advance to the November general election, at least this time around. I've written a bit about this already, and you can read some of my statements on my Facebook page, but I wanted to follow up with a few reflections. First, here's the current tally from the California Secretary of State's website, which continues to label this a close contest for the top two spot. First of all, 10-term establishment incumbent Mike Thompson wound up in clear first place with 79% of the vote. This we'll get to in a moment. Right-wing independent candidate and self-proclaimed mariner Anthony Mills, who scarcely ran any kind of campaign at all, appears to have come in second place with 9% of the vote. And our campaign at current count is listed in third with just over 8%. Just about 1,000 votes separating us from the second place contender. And finally, in a distant fourth, we've got Green candidate Jason Kashiniff with 3.5% or thereabouts. I'll share my reflections on all of this, but I wanted to at least begin with that statistical update. And I also wanted to start by saying thank you to everybody who supported this campaign in any way at all. I want to thank all the grassroots donors, all the contributions that poured in to make ours the only insurgent campaign with a candidate statement on the ballot, and really any real meaningful campaign to speak of. So thank you. Thank you to the dozens and dozens of citizen endorsements that poured in. Thanks for all the citizen voices that showed up supporting this people-powered campaign for social, racial, environmental, and economic justice for all. I want to say thanks to the volunteers who helped out, offering your spaces for events, coming together, sharing your time and effort. And thanks to all the human beings out there who offered words of encouragement, moral support, prayers, social media shares, kind words. It all went a long way, and I really appreciate it. And last, but certainly not least, thank you to the voters. Not only the thousands who showed up last week and voted for our humble grassroots campaign for our people and planet, but all active citizens everywhere who showed up to perform the civic duty of choosing our future. Even if you didn't vote for me, or if you voted for someone else, I respect you and I thank you for casting your ballot. As most of you are aware, voter turnout was incredibly low in this election. There are 5 counties that make up this district. In Contra Costa County, the voter turnout was a mere 20%. In Lake County, 24%. Napa, a mere 19%. Solano County, 36%. Sonoma County, 26%. And that's of registered voters. By comparison, in the 2016 presidential election year, turnout was significantly higher. That year, I earned nearly 25,000 votes, and I still only placed third with 12.5% of the vote, behind the Republican candidate's 19%. The bright lights of presidential elections, especially in 2016, appear to bring out the voters. Midterm congressional primaries, I suppose, not so much. But again, thanks to everyone who did show up. This year, the fight in 5th did not put up as much of a fight as I would have hoped, but it's not personal to our district. This low voter turnout is very much endemic to our culture these days. I think many folks are simply resigned to not being represented by our government. And as much as I attempted to inspire the imagination of the electorate, it didn't seem to go far enough. And it's pretty clear that we've got a long way to go. We've got a long way to go in our fight for true liberation and justice for all. And our consciousness and our civic participation are going to need to level up if we really want to become sufficiently organized to vote out the corporate establishment politicians who are blocking our progress. If we really want to get money out of politics take our government back for the people, and achieve the big changes that we need for our families and communities to really thrive, we're going to need to up our game. And looking ahead, with runaway inequality and the climate crisis only on the rise, it appears that the stakes are set to become even higher. So I congratulate Mike Thompson on his win in this primary, and also his inevitable win this November. And I also feel really frustrated with the fact that such an overwhelming majority of voters went with the status quo in this election. I've spoken frequently of the discoveries that inspired me to first run for this office in the 2016 election, that this long-reigning Democrat has accepted millions in special interest money from corporate lobbyists, including the biggest Wall Street banks like JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo. And you've heard it all. Big pharmaceutical companies like Merck, health insurance companies like Blue Shield and Aetna, telecom giants like Verizon, AT&T, and Comcast, and the list goes on. Military industrial complex giants like Raytheon and Honeywell, and Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin, and other forces representing the wealthiest 1/10 of 1%, like Walmart. The list is staggering, and it catalyzed me into action. I'm a dad. I see my daughter's future being sold to the highest bidder, and most Democrats and Republicans are just going along for the ride. There are a courageous few in the world of politics who have dared to stand up to this machine, and I regret to inform voters in this district that our 10-term, that's 2-decade representative, now on his way to an 11th term, is not one of them. I'm sorry, District 5 Democrats, he's not. And I say that with all due respect to the Honorable Mr. Thompson, with gratitude for the decades of service that he's put in, that my belief is that with the crises that we face in education, healthcare, housing, wealth inequality, and our shared environment, what we need right now is bold, courageous, and visionary leadership. And I stepped up because I didn't see that. I didn't see anyone really challenging Thompson's political machine, at least not anyone I saw as having a real chance of ever winning this election. So that was why I stood up in 2016, and that is also why I stood up in 2018 and threw my hat in the ring. One 5th District citizen left a comment recently that really resonated. Donna wrote, quote, "I voted for you and I swayed some others as well. It's disheartening that so many are content with the status quo. I think that perhaps in the midterms, a lot of voters just wanted the Democrat most likely to take Congress from the Republicans to stop Trump. I'm hoping that 2020 will bring out the progressives." Donna, I agree. For most people, unfortunately, it's party before country. I actually saw that in 2016 when I ran as a Democrat, challenging a Democrat, and lost second place to a Republican. This year, I celebrated in the primary that there was no Republican in the race. If there was, that person would likely have won the second spot pretty automatically. In the spirit of moving beyond partisan politics, I decided to run independent without the backing of any party, and it very nearly worked. Few can doubt that our campaign had the most energy behind it, but the voters ultimately decide, and the second spot in this race went to Mills, the Mariner. Not to be reductionist, but Mills had an almost non-existent campaign. Very basic website indicating some right-wing positions on things like immigration. He had no candidate statement, no mailers went home to voters. But my assessment is that when Republicans and right-wing voters showed up in this election, they saw the familiar Democrat Thompson. They saw my candidate statement with taboo progressive buzzwords like social justice, peace, immigrants' rights. They saw Green Party Jason, who no Republican would ever vote for. And then they saw Mills, a Mariner, clearly their man. And so it goes that Thompson will again run virtually unopposed this November and inevitably go on to his 11th term. Whew. In the 2016 primary, the Sonoma Times Index newspaper ran an editorial endorsement that quipped, quote, For Thompson to lose, something extraordinary would have to happen, like he were revealed to be the never-captured Zodiac killer from the 1970s, end quote. This year I quipped back in a campaign email, there is a hidden truth that, if revealed, might have roughly the same effect on local voters as if he were to be revealed as the notorious murderer of yore. The fact is that Thompson has accepted an alarming number of huge political contributions from lobbyists representing some of the world's most destructive corporations. All that money from insurance companies and too-big-to-fail banks, real estate developers, and Wall Street accounting firms, and industrial wineries, and I honestly figured, and I still do, that if the newspapers ever publish this stuff, if the Democrats of this district saw the nasty truth of where their representative gets his money, they would be off the Thompson bandwagon like that, and on to the elected Bernie delegate, challenging him from the left. Too late for this year. That is, unless we do find out that he's the Zodiac, or uncover some serious Me Too malfeasance on the part of the honorable representative. He's virtually assured another 2 years in office. To continue tacitly condoning the neoliberal politics of the Trump administration, and to continue presiding over the widening of the wealth gap and the gradual degradation of our rights and our home planet. So yeah, we can look forward to 2020 at this point. And in the 2020 election, I hope even more people will stand up and speak out, particularly about this scourge of big money in politics and how it affects us right here in the 5th District. Because whoever the progressive candidate may be, we're going to need people writing some serious letters to the editor to cut through this media blackout and expose the truth about our Wall Street incumbent. Because there are Wall Street Democrats out there, and we've got one right now, and it's a problem. Honestly, I don't know what would be worse, having to face Thompson's political machine again in 2020, or seeing him retire before the next congressional election without the voters having a chance to stand up and vote him out. When a newspaper says that it would be impossible for someone like Thompson to lose, it makes me really question our democracy, and it makes me want to run all the more. Because if they say the election's already decided before the voters even have a chance to speak out, it makes me want to say, oh really? And when someone says to me, like Mike Thompson said to me in 2015, you'll never get money out of politics, it makes me want to say, challenge accepted. We will get money out of politics. But it's going to take a fight. And it's rumored that Thompson is getting ready to retire. It's rumored even that his protege, former Republican State Senator Bill Dodd, is being groomed for the seat. Great, another old rich white guy. Well, whether the establishment is represented by Thompson or Dodd in 2020, hopefully our progressive movement will turn up and turn out. And for the love of God, stop endorsing your Democrat that's taking money from these huge corporations and blocking progress on things that we really need, like Medicare for all and affordable housing and tuition reform and, you already know, addressing climate change, addressing wealth inequality. For the love of God, stop endorsing this guy over and over again, Democrats. Stop it. Most of you seeing this probably already do see the urgency, especially because the Facebook algorithms are unlikely to put this video in front of people who don't already agree. You already probably have a sense that mass incarceration and deportation and homelessness and hunger in the richest country on earth and jobs that don't pay a living wage and for-profit education and healthcare systems that leave families broke and graduates indebted for life and endless war and climate change resulting in lethal floods and record fires add up to a picture that shows us that we can no longer wait. And it's saddening to me that in terms of at least electing a new congressional representative in this district, it's looking like we'll have to wait another 2 years. But that's where it's at. And you could probably tell I'm a bit disappointed. I poured my heart and soul into this campaign twice. And I did my best as a working dad with 2 jobs. And I invested more of my own time and money in the process than I could honestly even afford. I'm still picking up the pieces, and I'm still making sense of this loss and what it means. At core, though, I trust. My mother, who's probably my biggest supporter and one of my closest confidants, wisely told me, "It is what it is," and I've been taught to have ultimate faith in the perfect unfolding of the universe. It's definitely not over, because in the end, it's all okay. And if it's not okay, it must not be the end. I wish to express extra love and appreciation for the moral support that I've received from the people in my life, from my partner, from my mother, from my daughter and my sister and my dog and all my friends. Y'all have reminded me that through all the trials of life, there is a home on planet Earth for this man, and that even in loss, life goes on. I feel the love, and I thank you all. And to all my people, I'm committed. I'm committed to continuing the fight. I'll continue to serve. I'll continue to do my part for the movement. No one can do everything, but everyone has something to give. And I'm committed to doing my part, my humble little part in this great movement that we're all interconnected in. I'll continue to organize at a grassroots level with Transition US and other local change-making groups that I belong to. I'll continue to teach and to raise my daughter to be a leader and a peaceful warrior of the light. I'll continue to learn and train and grow. And when the time comes for my next move, I will be ready. Many local voters have remarked on the challenging nature of this quest, taking on such a long, entrenched, deep-pocketed, sitting establishment politician. Some have encouraged me to run for local office instead. And I just want to say that suggestion has been duly noted and taken into consideration. But I will also continue to assess the field in this ongoing contest for U.S. House of Representatives here in the 5th. Every 2 years we've got a chance. And if there's not a standing warrior challenging Thompson, who I see as a strong and viable candidate with vision and integrity in 2020 and beyond, I will continue to throw my hat in the ring, come what may. You can call it quixotic and say I'm tilting at windmills, but we are being represented, and again I use that term very generously, by someone who stands with the world's biggest and most toxic corporations. And as long as this is the case, we are unlikely to see meaningful action on the great crises of our times. Because if we want Medicare for all, if we want peace, if we want bold climate leadership and healthy drinking water for future generations, if we want leadership that's going to stand up against toxic projects like Orsem and Vallejo and so many other things that threaten our way of being and you know, our family's safety ultimately, if we want an open and free internet, if we want economic equality and jobs that pay a thriving wage, if we want justice, then we need to elect different representation. And when that is understood by a majority of voters, then we'll have it. And until then, we're going to be pushing this big stone uphill. And that feels like my quest. It may be a fool's quest, but so far it has been my quest. Someone has got to shine a light in this dark place. Thanks for bearing with me. Before I conclude, I do feel the need to address some things that are being said in some dark corners of the internet by a few individuals associated with the Green candidate in this congressional primary. I won't give too much credence to these words by repeating them, but I just want to take a moment to address these things. As I mentioned earlier, the Green candidate placed a distant 4th in this race. And while it's true that the number of votes that campaign got was high enough to have actually put us in 2nd place had they gone to our campaign instead, I just want to make it clear that I have no blame or ill will toward Jason or his supporters. In fact, I appreciate the Green Party very much. I embrace its core values and vision of social justice and peace and ecology. And as I said earlier, Ultimately, I place my country and even more deeply my humanity and my citizenship in the community of life before any party. Unfortunately, most voters vote identity more than we vote our self-interest. And I'll actually repeat that. Most voters vote our identity, that is, who do I think I am, more than we even vote our self-interest, what we need, what our children and future generations need. And since most voters vote identity, it doesn't make sense tactically to run as a member of the Green Party, because most voters do not identify with the Green Party. That's my analysis. A very few disheartened voters in the Green candidates camp have been throwing some shade my way, and I don't want to give sore losers and naysayers too much airtime, but I also feel called to address some things that have come up. So first, I don't believe anyone split the progressive vote. If a person feels called to run, then he or she should run, and perhaps even must run. And since I outranked Jason in the polls by a margin of greater than 2-1, it feels pretty clear that if we were to nominate a single progressive candidate, the people's choice is clear. It would be tactically unwise for us to choose the losing candidate, and it would be tactically wise for us to choose the winning candidate. And that's political science. I've been criticized for joining the race late, that it would have been nice of me not to join a fellow challenger to Thompson and run the risk of splitting the vote. And to this I replied, if we're going to automatically defer to the earliest candidate in the race, then I've got dibs on 2020. Of course, I actually say this tongue-in-cheek. 2020 does feel close. I am contemplating what it would be like to run again. And this is also supposed to be a democracy, which is to say there's no such thing as dibs. You can't just start earlier and feel like everyone's going to defer to you. If a person feels called to run, that person may run. And as always, the voters, as they just did last week, will decide. Directly to candidate Jason, brother, you've accused me of taking down your signs, and I just want to assure you that is something that I would never do. I trust the democratic marketplace and the space of ideas, and I don't feel the need to do anything to detract from anyone else's campaign. I didn't take your signs down. You've accused me of offering to remove, this is something I don't quite understand, but you've accused me of offering to remove your flyers from a table at an event. Again, this is not something that I would do. I don't know how this misunderstanding took place. All I can do is say that I respected your campaign, and I've never leveled any personal attacks or spoken ill of any candidate. If anything, I've only challenged my competition's qualifications to serve. When I entered this race, before the filing deadline in March, my Green brother had already been at it for several months, earning endorsements from a few local groups and a couple of other candidates who ended up losing. I reached out to some of these folks, these groups, and a couple of these candidates to let them know that I was running and to invite their dual endorsement. And I may have intoned in these communications that I was the superior candidate because that's what I believe myself to be. Why else would I be running, right? It's possible that I asserted that I was more likely to win. And as the vote shows, that was correct. I may have made the distinction that I have a track record of winning votes, that I'm a long-time grassroots activist in this district, that I'm actually employed, all unlike any of the rivals challenging Thompson in this race. But I never maligned anyone's character. I never would, and I won't. And if anyone's feelings were hurt, I apologize. To the voters who supported Jason and to all other candidates in this race, I offer my respect. I offer these candidates a special congratulations on standing up. Thank you for standing up for your truth. It takes courage to run. It takes consciousness to be involved in the political process to begin with. No matter who you voted for, I would have loved to have earned your support in this election if I didn't already, and I would be honored to earn it in a future election. But that's all a conversation for another time. For now, my main invitation is that we keep our eye on the ball, all of us, that we not be divided and conquered, that we remember what we're standing for here. We're standing up for social justice, for racial and environmental and economic justice for all. We're standing up together for getting big money out of politics and for reclaiming our government for the people. We're standing for building a system that works for us all, for our families and communities. And we need to remember that we stand together. Much respect and appreciation to all of you out there who were attempting to stand up for truth and justice in this primary election. We may have different approaches, just as species in a diverse ecosystem may differ, but we are all human beings of worth and dignity here. And we all want essentially the same thing: happiness, peace, love, healthy families, ultimately to live free and die well, and to give our children and grandchildren a better world. As Dr. King reminded us repeatedly, it really boils down to this, that all life is interrelated. Hopefully in the end, we'll realize this and work together to build a system that honors all people and future generations and the world that we share. One thing is certain, it's far from over. I am inspired and encouraged by so many of you, standing up, taking action, each in our own way, but each in a very necessary way. I appreciate you, and I look forward to what we'll be capable of building together. The work continues. The work continues. Thank you. Until next time.
We won't spend our lives waiting on society to save us. We are cultivating the gardens that will feed us. We take the power in our hands when we put them in the land. We plant the seeds to feed the generations. That's love.
Some of the men and women, them I never even had a home. Them always fighting for their life, them always living all alone. Some of the people given to evil, them I never really even know that them are powerful beyond all of the things in the universe. Say, love is the answer, love is the chant for Babylon to fall. So we're gonna wear it up on our heart, so we're gonna live it up on the road. If we never give it the chance, and how can we dance to the sound of the freedom song? Start singing along, start singing along, yeah.
Do it for the love, for the love. We do it for the love, we do it for the love, for the love. We do it for the love, we do it for the love, for the love. We do it for the love, we do it for the love, for the love. We do it for the love.
I still believe, even in the face of such overwhelming odds and a political machine that seems to be tricking 70%, 80% of would-be change makers out there, even in the face of a system that's been bought by the highest bidder, a system where more than half the voters don't even bother to show up. I still believe that we got this. I still believe, and I hope you'll still believe with me. We're going to need to start early. We're going to need to knock doors. We're going to need to huff and puff if we're going to blow this system down, you guys. Please keep the faith. We got this.